Well, hello, everybody.
Pictures.
Got a few pictures to share with you about some of the weather conditions up here. That's the topic today is weather forecasting. Oh, there's a Quincy. We've got that built out there. In fact, there's a group of high school students showing up this weekend. They're going to sleep out in it.
Oh
We've
my
had
gosh.
amazing snow, huh? 3 feet of snow. Yeah. And some of the animals are starting to change their behaviors there. And we've been having really amazing frost on the windows. 3 feet of snow, you can do anything. Snowshoeing, skiing, you can go anywhere. It's amazing.
And this is all up in Finland, Minnesota, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So we've got the 3 feet of snow up here is the thing, right on the shore. And I was telling Sue that we've got a little bit of ice that's forming out on the big lake, just kind of starting there. And people surfing in Duluth, ridiculous. Oh my gosh.
Oh, that is ridiculous. That's not safe.
Oh my gosh.
My goodness, that is craziness.
Oh, so I just wanted to play a few images here before we start as we're admitting people. My name is Joe Volevsky, and pretty soon we're going to end up meeting our presenters, Emily and Peter, and they're going to teach us about weather forecasting. But what we want to do is make sure that folks are coming in here and we get most of everybody here. We want to remind you that we're recording this. And so if you miss a part of it, or if Peter tells that one joke and you're like, oh, I forgot it, and you want to go back and watch it again just for the joke, you can. And Anna will put it on our website. So that's a wonderful thing.
Well, and in fact, that's what I'm challenging everybody in the chat today is let us know your best weather jokes. All right. We'd like to hear them. We're hoping that they might be better than Peter's.
Yeah. Excellent.
Just teasing.
Excellent. So welcome again, everybody. So I'm going to spotlight our presenters here. And that should be that they are front and center for you. And Emily and Peter, we're ready to learn from you. Maybe you can introduce yourself first and then dive into weather forecasting for us. Thanks.
Cool. Hi, my name is Emily, and I'm a naturalist here at Wolf Ridge.
And I'm Peter, and I'm a naturalist here too, and have been involved with weather for about 38 years as far as education. So hit it, Emily.
It's longer.
Have fun.
You've been doing weather at Wolf Ridge longer than I've been alive, like by far.
Well, you know, wisdom isn't always age, so.
True.
Talent. Go ahead.
Well, we are joined by our special guest here today, the atmosphere. We're out here on the telescope deck at Wolf Ridge, and I do believe Joe has a slideshow to pull up for us to give us some pointers on what we're talking about.
I do. Let me
We're
share
here
this.
to give some tips on how to, oh yeah, thanks. How to give some tips on using weather forecasting in your classroom. Some ideas on simple things you can do, ranging from, you know, like easy everyday things to maybe some longer term studies that you and your students can do. So I'll give Joe a post to click to our next one. We've got our guest here, the atmosphere. Peter, what is the atmosphere?
You know, the atmosphere is, in the simplest terms, the gas, liquid, and solids that are in the air around us. And of course, we know gravity kind of holds it all together.
Gotcha. So has our atmosphere been changing lately?
It has. We've been having so many Alberta clippers coming through. Joe Lufsky and I were on with our state climatologist, and he was telling us that we've had, I think, Joe, it was something like 18, 20 some Alberta clippers have been coming through. So we had our last one last night. So it was cloudy and then it got clear, and it's been clear since.
Oh, okay, so a change in the atmosphere
is a good definition of weather. Yes.
Weather.
Simple definition with, you know, young kids. It's just a change of our atmosphere.
Cool. So we're talking about weather. We're talking about that change in atmosphere. Is it random?
you know what? Weather has rules. And with kids, I, say a stoplight. So what does a red light mean to you?
Stop.
Okay. Is there exceptions?
Is there an exception to the
Yeah.
stoplight? No.
Well, how about if you're in an ambulance?
Okay, maybe.
I'm making a right turn?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So we call that a model if we're scientists. And scientists are always trying to figure out these complex models and what the exceptions are. We know green light, red light, but then there's all sorts of other things. So yeah.
Cool. So when we're talking about weather, click Joe. There we go.
There you go.
We have something simple we use here to talk about weather. We call the weather triangle. In that on our triangle, there's 3 different parts that kind of contribute to our weather. On the top there, we have what says temperature or fronts. And I got to get my gloves on for this one. Oh no.
Ooh, action.
So a front is when we have warm air and cold air colliding. It gives us our fronts, the tip of our weather triangle.
And that's kind of like if you're thinking of the chicken and the egg in one scenario, it's kind of our control system. If you talk to a meteorologist, they would make things a lot more complex. But, starting at least with primary and even with adults, this is a good place to start.
What else is on the weather triangle there?
Well, the 2 things that can get created by the warm and cold air colliding at fronts are going to be clouds and wind. And we can have fronts that are global and they collide and what do they create when they hit globally? What's that big wind above us?
Oh, the jet stream.
Yeah. And then have you ever been in a parking lot, and you see a little puff of wind from the hot air in the parking lot and the cool air in the forest behind, and it just kind of fluffs up?
Okay.
Yeah. So that's a really small front. So we have everything in between. And again, they can create wind. And a simple analogy that I love is you have a toothpaste tube and you have warm air on one side and cold air because they're kind of trying to take over each other and they're pushing. And when they push, what happens to that toothpaste tube? Oh, can you do that one more time?
No.
That was really good. Okay. So you have a squirt going out, and that squirt is wind. It's the movement of the liquids, solids, and gases in our atmosphere. So does that make sense for wind?
Yeah.
Okay. And we can define that usually in miles per hour if we're in Minnesota, or in the United States. And if you're in Canada, how would you measure that?
Kilometers?
Yeah. But even the scientists in the United States tend to use miles per hour. Okay. And then we have clouds. And so clouds, of course, are the precursor to rain, snow, snert. You ever heard of snert?
No, I think you made that up.
I did not. Honest. May I be hit by lightning. So snert is actually a combination of dirt from the Dakotas. I know we have some Dakota people here today, I think. And kind of being blown in, and it comes down in the snow, and you have actually a brownish snow, snert. So we can have combinations of lots of things happening when we have clouds forming. And clouds, what are they made out of? Is it liquid water or gas?
I feel like most people would probably say gas.
Yeah, you're right. When I talk to a lot of adults, they say clouds are gas. It turns out that they're liquid or solids. They can be frozen, but it's water usually with other little things, particles in there. And so the cloud need some ingredients. They need to be in an area where the air is being cooled, a front, or a place where the air is forming that cools it. And as the air cools, it can hold less water in the gas state and forces it to the liquid state. And as it does that, if there's little dust in the air, those water molecules will form around the dust or snow crystals. So what would happen if you had totally clean air?
Totally clean air. Would we never get rain?
Yeah, we might not. So, clouds are kind of that need some degree of pollution up there, dust. All right. So again, warm and cold air come together. They can create clouds. They can create wind, and then temperature change. That's really our big 3 things that we deal with in our weather.
So that's really cool talking about too. One of our cross-cutting concepts, especially things in science dealing with misconceptions. And big weather misconception, clouds are made of gas. We can address that with our students and help them realize that, hey, we need to think about that a little bit differently. And on our weather triangle here, by looking at one of those things changing, we can make predictions about how the others might change. And that's kind of where our little bit of forecasting is coming in today. We're going to be using those different things to help us predict the weather for the next 12 hours. See if Joe got mine. There he did. So, weather forecasting in your classroom, how can you bring this to your school? Well, we here at Wolf Ridge have been doing what we call a longitudinal study. Peter Harris has been recruiting naturalists to take the weather here at Wolf Ridge since what year?
I think I first came here in '84, and they were already doing it for 10 years before I came.
Cool. Well, I mean, like, if you ask anyone about the weather at Wolf Ridge, Peter Harris's name is going to get brought up. But what happens is that we have this location over here in front of us that naturalists come out at the same time every day, 7 o'clock in the morning. It's a lot of fun to come check the weather and see what the weather has been like. We always go to the same spot. We've got tools set up. And then after they collect our weather data, they present the that they've collected to the bowl of merry chipper children eating breakfast. And that usually comes out in a variety of ways. My crew, we did it in song. There's always been jokes, skits.
Oh, did you know about why the king is always around for storms?
Because he likes the rain?
Yes, because he likes the rain. Very good. Okay.
So we try to make weather an instance where kids have the opportunity to share their data and present those findings with others. And it's really cool because this topic of weather really covers a lot of different disciplines. Of course, we're talking about meteorology, but we also get geography in here in that we're going to go set up a site. We're using a compass. We're taking directions. We can also talk about weather and cultures. We have some fun weather folklore things. You know, of course, the very standard red sky at morning, sailors take warning. We've got red sky at night, sailors delight. But getting into your ELA standards, weather is great to kind of check out those quirky little things. And then
can I tell you something?
Oh gosh.
So you might send the students to talk to their grandparents or aunts and uncles or great grandparents and ask them, do they know some weather lore? So it's a way of getting people to go back into their family history and find out, because there's a lot of stories.
But we're in March in like lion, not like a lamb.
Yep.
I don't know what I consider yesterday and today. Lion or lamb?
Today's a lamb.
Lamb.
Yeah.
Cool. So citizen science too is also a topic we cover. That's totally coming out here, collecting this data. We do report our data, whether you don't necessarily have to get that degree of commitment in your classroom, but if it's something you're interested in, totally go for it. It's really cool for students to see their information like making a difference. And then also that public speaking bit, getting the information you collect and the forecast you predict out to other students and seeing how we can help them understand what the weather's going to be like.
When in the school day might they do that?
I would think like morning announcements, morning circle kind of idea would be a really great time for that.
Cool.
So as you're getting started on doing weather forecasting in your classroom, one of the best places to do this is actually outside of your classroom. So the best kind of thing to start here is we picked a site that we are going to be showing how you might start setting up an area for your weather collection. So we're going to go on a little field trip here, moving the tripod nice and slow.
Should we flip it?
We'll see where I'm going.
You can go over.
Oh, my finger is in my glove. Flip screen. Here we go. Okay, da-da-da. We grab our clipboard and things. Oh, and the bubbles. Don't forget the bubbles. So we're leaving one deck behind the Science Center here at Wolfridge, and we're traveling out in front of the other one. This deck here is where we do our weather collection every morning, but we're stopping here.
Joe, can you hear them?
I was going to have a little patience.
Oh,
Oh, they started.
First thing we're gonna do is set up.
They're talking. I don't know.
Oh, did you? What?
So we lost much of what you
Nope.
said over the last maybe 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Gotcha. So we'll move it a little closer here, maybe. Phone didn't like the field trip. Okay, can you hear me now, Joe?
Yes.
Cool. I was just saying I'm probably gonna sink in the snow. It's so deep over here. But we're gonna start out after we've picked our location by setting up a compass rose in right now we're gonna do it in the snow because that's what we have. But if you're doing this, you might consider making a more permanent fixture, maybe with paint on the ground, with piles of rocks. But Peter and I have some rope here, and we made a big circle.
Yep, and I have with students gone, and we've spent a half a day at some school going and building a compass rose out of rocks and complex things. You're doing good, Emily. Keep on going. Like Joe said, we have about 3 feet of snow here. There she goes. Keep going. Make maybe 3 trips around. See
3.
if we can
What?
get dizzy. Yeah. Yeah, there we go.
No,
Okay, and this compass rose is important because knowing our direction of our wind is going to help set up things for making our simple forecast. All right, what do you think? Is that good enough?
I think so.
Okay, here, do you want the special stuff?
So we also put to see it in the snow maybe a little bit better. We've got some food coloring in a salad container bottle.
All right. And, oh, should I do that and you'd be the compass person?
Sure.
All right. So there you go. Tell me where to go.
Let's see. Using my compass, I can see that north is this way.
All right. So tell me if I'm lined up.
Looks good.
All right. I'm going to hold that 1 second. I'm going to get fancy here. I'm going to move it out. Okay. All right.
North.
North. That would be an N, right?
Yes.
Oh, look at that. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, fun. What
Okay.
color don't you recommend using?
Well, I've used yellow before. and-
Uh-oh, that doesn't sound good. Okay.
Okay.
What direction is going to be over here?
How about east?
Really? That
Oh,
way?
you're going already northeast?
Oh,
Where
north?
are you going?
Oh, that east is all the way over here? Okay. All right. Okay. There we go.
Don't trust me. Oh,
Scientific, inquiry. East. There we go.
so, as you can see, setting up a compass rose, not too difficult. You can do it as a temporary measure or make something a little more permanent. The south and west on quick here. So,
And I know,
This is
Emily,
behind.
when you guys have done
Thank you.
this in the summer, you've used rocks. And I've even used Sharpie markers just to do a NEWS on just rocks that we can find in the school grounds. So, I mean, it can be something super duper easy. And the kids love getting involved, finding the rock or whatever it would be.
totally. I'm gonna put
Very
this back
good.
around here.
Okay. So,
What we can do is make some kind of wind indicator. Well, we had a wind sock and we tried to stick it in the snow over here, but we're in kind of a spot where the wind doesn't blow right here. So maybe pick a spot where if you're gonna get good wind, but we couldn't put it
where's
on,
the natural spot at a school that would have something?
like a nice flat area by the playground.
what's something usually out in front of the school, Emily?
Flagpole.
Flagpoles. Yeah, they're great. So you can do that. All right. I think I need something else. Oh, I'll run and get it. The bubble blower. Should I get that?
Oh yes, we need that. So now that we have our compass rose, we've got some kind of wind indicator. Ours is just right over there. We can go ahead and start trying to make our forecast. Let's see, where's my Joe? Click one.
Oh, click one. So I want you to also know, Emily, that periodically we lose you, our connection,
Okay.
just so you know. There we
Man, I
go.
wonder if okay.
Should we go up to the, so why don't we go back up to the deck since our reception's good, but everybody can imagine that we could be down here, okay? But we're gonna go to the deck where our reception's better.
For some odd reason, the phone doesn't like the sound. All right, we'll try again. And Joe, you let us know when you can't hear us and whatnot.
Absolutely.
Is that better? All right. So I'm gonna point to where north is. North is right over there, right?
Mhm.
So we'd have drawn on our deck over there, and south here and west over there. So the sun's setting, it looks like, right in the right spot. Would you like the bubble blower?
Yes.
Could you show this special technology? I just like promoting this with teachers. It's so cool. Try turning it upside down.
Oh. Ooh.
It does not drip. So if you can find bubble blowers like this, that's great.
Why am I blowing bubbles, Peter?
Well, if you watch the bubble movement, which is a little hard on our deck because we have the upper part, we can see which way they're going. Oh, they're going that way. Let's try go blowing it over towards the edge of the deck here.
Oh, there it goes.
Okay, so it looks like our bubbles are blowing this way, and we have a weird situation with our cliff here. Can you focus it towards the windsock too? So we can see the flag you could use at your school. You wouldn't need to use bubbles. You could use the flag. And the flag is being blown, and it's coming from the northwest as the wind is blowing. So people are always confused because it's not where the wind is going, it's where the wind is coming from, right?
Mhm.
So what is our direction again?
North.
West. So I'm gonna go and write that down. It is coming from the northwest.
So why we're looking at wind direction is because simply using wind speed and direction can help us to make our 12-hour forecast. Those two things can give us a good idea of what the next 12 hours are going to look like. And what Peter's writing on is, let's see, our next slide here. There we go. So we're doing this nowcast weather report just to kind of get an idea of what's going on right now. So that can help us out later. Joe's got these sheets that we're going to have on here as PDFs if there's something that interests you, modifying it to where you're at. But we're filling out the top part right now to check out our wind speed and direction. And the next slide has the wind direction that we were just using.
Yeah. And so this one you could use just really simple with the kids. So if we look at the northwest and we look towards the north on this chart, does it say warm or cold, Emily?
It says colder towards the north.
Okay, which makes sense, right? And we're not going to try to explain to people why this works. This is more learning that there's a relationship. Weather's a complex thing, and I think learning first the relationships and how you can make a forecast rather than all the whys right away. Okay, so it's coming from the north, so we'd assume cold. And then what's our other direction?
West, and that says dry.
Okay, so by dry, no clouds. We see any clouds up there?
Not at all.
Okay, and this is a good deal for doing a 12-hour forecast. Our wind direction will tell us the type of change we could expect or staying the same. Okay, so northwest, we expect it to still stay cold and clear. Now what's useful of wind direction or wind speed?
Wind speed, that's going to be telling us the magnitude of our change. We've even got a PDF of that one too. And here's our estimating our wind speed scale here. I feel like since we've been out here, our wind is picking up a little bit.
So while you're talking, I'll kind of move it towards the trees a little
Okay.
bit in the flag.
So as we're looking at this, this is a simple chart where you start at the top here, and we start with if our bubbles drift. If true, go to B. If false, our wind speed is 0. There's another reason for Peter loves blowing bubbles. So the bubbles were drifting. And as we keep going through this chart, we can see by looking at the trees in the area, by looking at our weather sock, hopefully by not looking at shingles flying off a roof. But if we get to that point,
What happens if that's happening?
oh man, your wind speed's about 46 miles an hour.
And what's that officially?
Is that a hurricane?
It's a hurricane, yeah.
So by looking at those different things, we can tell our wind speed. And right now, I got all the way to about E, where our small trees with needles were swaying. So our we moved to F, where our wind speed is about 19 to 24 miles an hour because the large branches aren't necessarily in motion.
Okay. And probably more towards the 19 speed because of that thing. So what does that then mean as far as, is that a lot of wind? Not much? What?
Well, looking at our chart, it's pretty like near the middle of it.
So what I found is usually 0 to 10 miles an hour, not much change happening. 10 to 20, a medium amount of change. So if we're going to still have clear skies, but what do you think our temperature might get tonight?
So cold.
Yeah, maybe a little colder than it has been. So we could see some nice cold air coming in, which is forecasted. It's supposed to get pretty chilly and then warm up again tomorrow. Cool.
So there's our wind speed, our wind direction, those two forms that are available to us. And then we can also look at, clouds.
Well,
I mean, we can't.
I'll
right
be your
now.
cloud.
We'll be the cloud.
Yeah. So, okay.
Oh gosh.
So what cloud am I? Cloud type?
Are you very large and low?
I am.
Are you a cumulus
I
cloud?
am. And so we can learn a language, right? We can learn Latin. What does cumulus mean? Do you remember?
No.
Puffy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in Latin it means puffy. How about this one?
Are you trying to be a, let's see, stratus?
I am. And or layered, kind of like that pudding mix. Oh yeah, it's really good. And what do you think stratus means?
Straight?
Yep, straight or layered. Very
Nice.
good. Yep. And then what's the last one?
I would guess cirrus.
Wispy. Yeah, cirrus means wispy. So, and there's also more Latin terms that they'll use for clouds, usually based on their height, their form. And those cloud types can tell us kind of weather we might expect too. So again, we could just start out with wind direction, wind speed, and then move into clouds.
Nice. So there's clouds. Our next one on there is our forecast sheet here. So the one on the left is just kind of a simple forecast, the one that we had earlier with that wind direction. If that other sheet you would like to be looking at some other different things such as barometers. I can't put this on here. There we go. Let's see. As the barometers, the cloud cover, precipitation, that kind of gives you a little bit more into the forecasting. But the one on the left there, that's wind direction, is a really great indicator for your 12-hour forecast.
Cool.
Cool.
And so you can start out, like she said, just simple and then build complexity if you find your students are wanting to do more and more. So the word climate is, we hear that a lot and it's kind of scary, but it can be defined pretty much just like up there, the average weather over a defined area of a planet. So other planets have weather. In fact, NASA has meteorologists that specialize on other planets, particularly Mars. We've had a former naturalist here that participated in being a meteorologist for NASA on a Mars pretend mission, which is pretty cool. So within a defined time period.
The way I've explained it to students is that weather tells you what clothes to wear each day, and climate tells you what clothes to keep in your closet.
Oh, I like that. Very cool. All right. So with climate, if you could hit the next slide there, Joe. So you can move on and learn a lot more about weather, but one thing I wanted to mention was climate change. And so, you know, it would seem like we should be learning climate change. Well, I'll say this, people are going to pay more attention to climate if they have a connection socially and emotionally to the weather. And making a 12-hour forecast, do you remember the first time you were successful on using wind direction for making a forecast?
The first time I was an actualist here, yeah.
Did you have any like empowerment or anything?
It really feels good when you like get your forecast and you're like, oh, I was right. But then if you're wrong, it gets you back to like, what did I do differently? Or maybe you start doing additional research on why your forecast wasn't true.
Cool. So we've involved kids, and we can go and learn a little bit about the climate. I did want to, and then if we do that, take some more interest in climate change. So here's a, you know, where it doesn't necessarily seem it's all about climate change. It's building that footwork where kids hopefully and adults will pay more attention to it. And again, the quick things in Minnesota for messaging on climate change is in northeastern Minnesota experience this. We're getting more precipitation and we can expect more. And then also that we will be seeing our coldest, and we are seeing this, our coldest colds disappearing. So coldest, of course, being farther to the north was where we get the biggest change in Minnesota. What month would we get the biggest change if it's the colds or the cold?
We didn't rehearse this.
Oh, come on. You
I was
guys.
gonna guess like February.
Yeah, for January.
Yeah,
So the
okay.
winter, you know, the deep winter. So usually January, February, sometimes December. And so we're expecting that, and then nighttime temperatures or daytime temperatures, what do you expect?
A colder?
Yeah.
Nighttime.
Nighttime. So nighttime, farther to the north during the coldest months. And so like where we had lots of minus 45s and so on, we're not getting those as much. So, or in fact, we're drastically having fewer. So that's kind of our sum up of climate change effects we're seeing in Minnesota. Did you want to hit some of the additional resources?
Well, when I sat down and asked Peter, I said, if you were to give additional resources to people going to this talk, which ones would you give? And these were the first couple he mentioned. That first one there being searching on Google, the NWS, and then where you're at is going to give you great things from the weather.gov. The next one down is if you want to get a little bit more involved in measuring precipitation, get a rain gauge, being part of a bigger citizen science project. Let's see. And then the project data stream was, again, one that's a little bit more involved as teachers working towards.
Yeah, so you'll end up, it's through the American Meteorological Society. It's a great program. It's pretty intense. Secondary teachers would love it. You actually get a working meteorologist to mentor through. So, and you end up with paid credits through American Meteorological Society graduate credits. So highly recommended.
Another additional resource is Peter Harris is a great weather resource up here at Wolfridge. He's the one we go to for weather things, but I do have a weather joke for you. Peter.
Let's hear it. I want to hear it.
What's the difference between weather and climate?
10,000 years.
You can't weather a tree, but you can climb it.
5. All right.
And with that, we open it up to additional questions.
Excellent. So if you have questions or if you have comments, maybe there are some things that you saw that you've done slightly different, please feel free to unmute yourself and just go ahead and share. Otherwise, if you want to share in the chat, that Sue and I can read those for you as well.
Sidewalk chalk for the compass. It's a good one.
Yeah.
What do they do with bad rainbows?
Jerry's gonna give us a good one.
Send them to Prism.
Good one, Jerry.
Oh, that's a good one.
They
But they
get a
get
light
a light
sentence.
sentence. I love it. I love it.
Very good.
I know I've listened to Peter's discussion before, and I started working especially with the kindergarten, first and second graders at several of the schools that I would visit. And just that basic compass and understanding wind speed and wind direction, they were really enamored and been able to empowered, I should say, to forecast the weather. And that was in part of the current grad standards or science standards. And they'll have some of those qualities again in the new ones that are being adopted now. So I will say I had amazing success with these tools, K1 and 2, and of course, any older grades as well.
And like Peter said, there's so much you could go into weather. I mean, as naturalists, we take classes with Peter every once in a while, and every time he builds in a little bit more things about the weather. Starting out simple with your kids, even just doing this little bit for quite a bit of time, really getting them solid in it, it's going to make a huge difference in like the, what do you call it? Confidence of their weather forecasting.
So Jerry's talking about using bubbles for wind speed. He has the students chase them to get the feeling of the speed as well.
Oh, that's
Should I have
great.
Peter start chasing bubbles out here?
Yes.
And I've used the little windmills, like the little ones on a pinwheel on a stick, and the kids can hold it up and then they move all the different directions and see where the windmill catches the most amount of wind. And again, they
That's
love playing with things, those things that are active, really, they enjoy that a lot. But I liked having the same spot that they could go to and have their weather spot.
Cool. I'm curious if any teachers have ever let their kids go out by themselves. So we switch off weather duty. So our staff, is responsible. So like training everybody, and then say 2 students or 3 students are in charge of going out and looking at the wind direction, calculating the wind speed, coming in and going out to the playground on their own and then coming back in. I'm wondering if anybody has done that.
I know they allowed the 4th and 5th graders at the elementary schools I was at, especially because they knew where the weather spot was. And it was close to the school grounds, and they were given that kind of privilege to collect the weather data for the school, and they got to make the announcements and put it up on the board. And then of course, if a student wasn't being respectful of their privilege, they may not be able to go out the next time to take the weather data, but it was also really close. So that was neat to be able to do it. And I do know some of the schools did integrate the flagpole as their windsock because it was easy. It was a really easy place to do. There's another comment here by Erica saying, I noticed when you talked about wind direction, you said the wind was coming from the northwest. Does that mean the bubbles are moving to the southeast?
Correct. Yes.
That's a hard shift to sometimes get people's mind around. Very like, you have to kind of think about it for a second.
Yeah. And weather is a lot of invisibilities too, right? We can't, until we see or feel wind or see a temperature. So and some of the terminology people, like when we talk low and high pressure, I like to change them up and use light and heavy instead of low and high. because when people hear low, they think, oh, it means down here, and high means up here, whereas it's talking about the pressure, low and high pressure. So yeah, we can relearn and kind of talk about a lot of things. They're confusing.
I was thinking we could use my hair almost instead of bubbles right now.
Oh yeah, does humidity affect your hair?
Yeah.
Okay, and sometimes people will build essentially devices for measuring humidity with human hairs. You can do that. So for the upper ages, building weather instruments, I know a few teachers that have done that and built some fairly sophisticated things, or getting a museum of old weather instruments along with the folklore. My mother was in the Marine Corps in World War II, and she was a weather technician. And so I have a lot of the tools from her in the 1940s. So a lot of families it's a great way to get family discussions happening, I think. So.
Joe, what did you and Lori just get set up at your house?
Oh yeah, so that's pretty exciting. So we got an ambient weather station, which cost, I think it was about $150, and it connects to our internet. And so that at any second, I can go anywhere and check the weather at my house. And it's keeping that data all the time. And what happened is that when I was messing around with that, I found out I was connected to everybody else's ambient weather station in the United States and probably around the world. I didn't really go too far to check, but that was really fun to be able to compare that. And so then the last thing that I'll add here is that I found that there were about 4 of us just in our little region right here. And in particular, there's one person who lives closer to Lake Superior. I'm midway, and then there's somebody who's even further inland, and I can check our temperatures, I can check our wind speeds, I can check a variety of different things based on our relative proximity to Lake Superior. And that has been just great fun to be able to explore. So getting something like that, and think about that, $150, and I'm connected to everybody else's weather station. I think that might be something that schools would be able to do, and then connect to other schools that might have a similar system.
That's fascinating. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
If schools are also going to connect, with something like that too, Weather Underground to the University of Wisconsin has a lot of great educational materials. So highly suggest that.
That one's, I think, linked in that thing we have.
So you want to say the name of your thing again, Joe?
Yeah, Ambient, AMBIENT. And what I'll do, I mean, we're not trying to sell ambient weather stations, but what we can do is we can at least put a link on there, and there might be other weather stations that other people use as well. Actually, that's a curious thing. Do any of you have weather stations at your homes that you have that
or schools?
Than that? Or schools, exactly. No comments yet, so maybe that's something we all should be doing. I can share one last thing actually about that ambient weather station is that I'm trying to get Peter Harris to get one directly on the shore. His house is directly on the Lake Superior shore. And I want to get about 3 or 4 others to create a grid of sorts so we can figure out the different microclimates and the different weather patterns based on the way the winds might be blowing off of Lake Superior, and also how some of the terrain around here might affect it. I know that in some of the low spots, it can be 10 degrees colder than I would have anticipated as I'm driving along, because that cold air just sinks right down there. So it might be 30 below when I drive through there. It'd be interesting to have a weather station in that hole.
Yeah.
Would you like to see our snow stake quick?
Sure. What'll happen is we've got a few more comments here. So Erica writes, if we want to know why the different weather patterns are connected, kind of like cold weather and wind from the north, what's a good resource for learning about this? Did you capture that with the question?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I would say there's some great K-12 curriculum. Sometimes they try to dive into it way too quick, I think. But if we center learning about low pressure systems, and I'd be glad if anybody wants to call and tell kind of my storyline that I like to tell. But Weather Underground does a pretty good job of coming up with some explanations of how the pressure systems bring warm and cold air together. And I have to keep reminding people, it's all about bringing warm and cold air together. And low pressure systems, when they come towards us, bring warm and cold air together. And they do it in two places, one place called a warm front and one place called a cold front. High pressure systems push air down from a uniform spot. It doesn't mix the warm and cold air. It could be a bunch of cold air, it could be a bunch of warm air, it could be a bunch of medium air, but it's not mixing warm and cold air together. And therefore we have clear skies like we have now. So yeah, Weather Underground, I highly suggest. Just general K-12 books. There's a lot of them that do it, but it might take your head some time getting the storyline you want to tell down, because it's a confusing subject line because there's so many connections. But once you get it, it's fun to work with. I would also say for special ed kids, it's really a great subject line. I had one student who was fairly high functioning Asperger's student that came his first time here as a 6th grader. And then the last time he came here was as an 11th grader. And about 2 years ago, I got a note from him. He had gotten his master's in meteorology. He was an acting meteorologist. And he was telling me he was married, successful, and his interest in meteorology, along with many other things, was there. And it wasn't just Wolf Ridge he had there, but that was part of that growing experience. I've also, I have dyslexia. And so for me, trying to weather is like a ballet, understanding motion. And so you could take it and learn it in terms of numerical physics. You can take and learn it in terms of descriptive means, but you could also take and learn in terms of movement. And for me, that's what's fascinating, is understanding how air moves and how warm and cold air. And the last name that I'll mention is Luke Howard. For people familiar with clouds, he's kind of considered the cloud guru that kind of was the first to start saying, hey, clouds can be reproduced. Just like we have species, clouds seem to come into groups. And the story is that he was a student that had attention deficit type behaviors, but he loved looking out the window, and he started just drawing clouds. That became his profession. So, take it whichever direction it goes. It's amazing.
Luke, what was his name again?
Luke Howard.
Howard. Okay, thank
Is
you.
an English fellow.
Okay.
That's awesome. Hey, Peter, I'm going to share one more story in a moment, but you said that you're going to take us over to the snow rule.
Yeah,
and
we'll do that now.
Why don't you wander along there? I just wanted to point out that John Olson wrote in here that he has a weather station as well, and it actually reports directly to Weather Underground. And so that's been brought up several times, and it happens to be, I believe, the same kind of weather station that I have. So I just didn't even realize that you can connect it to that as well and contribute to the broader understanding right from your house. Problem is, of course, John, is that his weather station is down right now, so he's got to fix it.
All right, saved you the hassle of secure.
And so one of the things that we measure here is we also measure how much snow, if you could go over that way, or just show the people a snowboard, Emily. So there's a board out there. It's called a snowboard. And we take a ruler and measure how many tenths of an inch of snow have fallen. We also melt snow and tell how much precipitation in a rain gauge. And then snow depth, how much is on the ground at our measurement time of 7 o'clock. So most of the people will go and stick in random spots, but we have people walking all over. You can see somebody even walked in here. But this tube has distances. Right here, the line says 36 inches. You could make a tube at your school. And then, so we're sitting at 35, 34, 33 inches, and we might get 12 inches this weekend,
What?
which would be up around here. And if we look, we'll see years written on this snow tube. 1993, the map. 2004 was the record snow depth. When fourth graders went in the snow, we had to get tow trucks to haul them out. I mean, they were buried in there. And then you can see we're right in the hot of a lot of years. So you can take that weather data and do some fun things with it that, you know, you would make it a lot more visual at school.
Yeah. Snow tube.
Well, cool. Thank you for sharing.
Unless anybody
with
has
us.
anything else.
This is a very majestic shot of you right here.
Yes. Thanks for sharing, Peter and Emily. Thank you very much. What I wanted to do now
You're welcome.
is that we're going to pull Sue and me in here. And I just want to thank everybody who continues to come to the workshops here. That I know, Sue, we've got another workshop lined up for next week, right?
Absolutely. You're going to want to come on back next Wednesday. Sue Dahl from Wargo Nature Center in the northern suburbs here in the Twin Cities. She's going to be presenting on just quick, easy nature activities to take your class outside, especially as our weather is turning better and better. Maybe you've been stuck inside a bit. She works with all different ages. She is very creative, and I really highly recommend checking this out. I am going to also put in the chat right now, Joe, the CEUs, if those of you are interested in earning those through Hamlin.
Sweet. And what I want to remind folks is that the video from this is going to be put on the website. Anna will always takes care of us and puts it there. And then also a lot of the slides that Emily shared are actually PDFs that we're going to have there as well. So like the compass rose with the different wind
Yeah.
direction, what it means if the wind is blowing from a certain direction, that's going to be there. So resources that you can use. And what I ask is that if you all have resources or connections to things that you think are going to be useful, send those on to us as well. And Anna will put the ones that seem most appropriate out there on that website and make it available to everybody. I keep telling people that the strength of Teach Outdoors Minnesota is not just our presenters, but it's everybody who comes as well and is able to share those things. And we take the chat and anything that you put in there, except for Jerry's jokes, we put on that website.
I liked that joke.
Okay, maybe we'll put that on the website. Yeah. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
What will happen is Sue and I, typically we hang on here for a little bit if people want to chat and bring up things that they're working on. Otherwise, have a great evening and we look forward to seeing you next Wednesday.
Sounds great. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
There's Sue Dahl.